Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and welcome to another special week of reviews on the weekends. That's right, this is Muppets Weekend. Yes, for Muppets Weekend, I will be reviewing two Muppet TV materials, and the first of the two, yes, that's right, you read the title, you know exactly what this one is. Because what could have been, and what was originally intended to be the start/beginning, where we would see the Muppets slowly making their way into the Disney family, because in 1990, Jim Henson was about to make a deal with Disney and with the CEO of Disney at that time, Michael Eisner, to acquire some of the Muppets and his company being a part of the Disney family. And the fact that there was going to be a lot of Muppet materials making their way to Disney, most notably at the Disney parks, and not to mention on television, the Muppets would appear on a special TV special on the Disney Channel. Yes, The Wonderful World of Disney and so on, which aired on May 6th, 1990, and that being The Muppets at Walt Disney World. Yes, The Muppets at Walt Disney World. Yeah, I gotta say, because The Muppets at Walt Disney World, my first exposure to this, knowing about this, and because, I'm a huge Muppet fan, and when, I was starting to watch a lot of Muppets when I was a bit young, and even checking out some, Muppet materials and discovering them for the first time, some Muppet materials that came out, say, in the 80s, 90s, on television, and especially, in a little bit of the old days of YouTube where, seeing some of that on YouTube, I mean, even, nowadays, you can find some full versions of those, from, say, where the Muppets went camping, or, the Muppet Family Christmas, and Muppets of Walt Disney World being another one of those, yeah. I want to say, maybe it was around, 2010 or 11 I saw and watched this on YouTube somewhere, but just, yeah, I do remember, when I first saw this and watched some of it on YouTube, and then when watching the full version, yeah. But, I mean, The Muppets at Walt Disney World, it's a hilarious, funny, entertaining piece of Muppet materials where, this being the first time we see the Muppets being there at Disney, on Disney property, and most notably, of all places, especially at that time, Walt Disney World. Just seeing the Muppets at the Disney parks, and at that time, in 1990, we had Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Hollywood Studios, but back then being called MGM Studios. And before, there was also a fourth theme park, which being Animal Kingdom. Yeah, that came in the late 90s. So yeah, and not to mention that, as I said, that around that time, in the late 80s and up to 1990, where Jim Henson was making plans to incorporate his Muppet characters into the Disney family, sparking a deal and partnership with Michael Eisner and, with Disney itself to acquire some of the Muppets and his company to be a part of the family, all except for some, most notably Sesame Street, because, from Defunct Land and Electric Dragon 505, they went into full detail on this stuff, what was going on when Jim Henson was trying to make a deal with Michael Eisner and those at Disney, and I'm sure you know this by now, but yeah, and the fact that Jeffrey Katzenberg got in the way and was, being very rude at times, and poor Eisner, he had to keep apologizing to Henson over Katzenberg's behavior and such, but not to mention that Eisner had a few moments of his where he kept pestering Henson on wanting to have the Sesame Street Muppets as well, but Henson, flat out telling him that the answer is full-time no. So, yeah. And in the end, and even when the Muppets at some point did become a part of the Disney family, the Muppets from Sesame Street didn't, but And not to mention that, at the Disney parks, most notably MGM Studios, which being a perfect fit for the Muppets, There was originally going to be an entire Muppet-themed land. We would have also had, say, a Roger Rabbit-themed land. So, yeah, but seemed like the Muppets land was going underway. Two big attractions being in the Muppet land would be, say, Muppet Vision 3D and the Great Muppet Movie Ride. And in fact, there would have been a chef's cooking kitchen class and such, and another restaurant that would have, say, Rizzo and the Rats, and so on, but yeah. But unfortunately, when everything was looking pretty good, but despite the fact that, yeah, there were some bumps in the road for Henson and Disney, sadly, that would all come to an end when, a week after the release of The Muppets of Walt Disney World, Jim Henson would sadly pass away, and yeah. But thankfully, only one Muppet attraction still made it, and which of course being Muppet Vision, so yeah. So, yeah, from The Muppets of Walt Disney World and Muppet Vision 3D, those were like some of the last big things where we would have the entire Muppet cast, especially the father of the Muppets himself, Jim Henson, ever doing a Muppet project, coming straight from him, in the palm of his hands and such. And also the fact that, he would make a couple of TV appearances, like most notably the Arsenio Hall show, which, yeah, around that time, it was when the Muppets at Walt Disney World was coming on, and the fact that, yeah, because, just not long after Jim's appearance on the Arsenio Hall, yes, because he would sadly pass away. But yeah, just overall, The Muppets of Walt Disney World itself, it's a really hilarious, entertaining piece of Muppets material, and I would say probably it's an important piece in the Muppets' history, because, again, this is where it all began, where they would first step foot in Disney, and yeah. And, despite the fact that what was originally considered to have the Muppets and Jim Henson's company be a part of the Disney family, which didn't go underway, and after Henson's passing, very later on, in the next decade, around 2004, around to 2004 and 5, yeah, the Muppets would officially become a part of the Disney family. So, yeah, that did happen eventually, so yeah. Alright, but anyway, so yeah. The Muppets of Walt Disney World, like I said, funny, entertaining, just yeah. Alright, so, as always, for me, read the description / the story. The Muppets at Walt Disney World is a television special starring Jim Henson's Muppets at Walt Disney World in Lake Buena Vista. If I'm pronouncing that right, I know I should be, but, Florida, yeah. The special aired on NBC as part of the magical world of Disney. Yes, the wonderful world of Disney, but then going by the magical world of Disney, yeah. On May 6th, 1990, 10 days prior to Henson's death. Yeah. It was the last Muppet project completed by Henson. Well, and as I said, not just that, but also 1 year after Henson's passing, we would get the very last Muppet material that Henson would ever work on, which being Muppet Vision 3D. Yes. Okay, so getting into the Muppets at Walt Disney World itself, because, yeah, well, for one thing, and knowing the Muppets, so much is happening in the Muppets at Walt Disney World, because it starts off where Kermit, whom brings along his Muppet friends from Fozzie, Gonzo, Scooter, Piggy, the Electric Mayhem, Ralph, his nephew Robin, Beauregard, Camilla. They are making their way to, they've made their way to Orlando, Florida, to the swamps, to basically, there's like a family reunion going on with Kermit and his fellow frogs, and there's also going to be a frog festival, and there's a bit of singing and that the frogs do, and Kermit playing on his banjo. But the Kermit's Muppet friends, they're not having a good time being there. And even when, like, say, something that does intrigue the Muppets is the fact that Kermit mentions that after, what they're doing in the swamps and with the Frog Festival, then they'll watch the fireworks from Magic Kingdom, because turns out that this location of this swamp where the frogs are happens to be very close, like right behind Magic Kingdom. And by saying Magic Kingdom, and of course with that, Walt Disney World, the Muppets are excited about this, and they want to explore and visit Walt Disney World. But, you know, that's not what they came for in the first place, because, yeah, and with why Kermit brought them here to Orlando. So, yeah. Then making their way to Walt Disney World, they first make their way to MGM Studios. And unfortunately, because, yeah, they are greeted by the security guard, whom is played by the late legendary Charles Grodin, whom had worked with the Muppets before, being in one of the first 3 Muppet films, being in The Great Muppet Caper, yes. And he plays the security guard, Quentin Fitzwaller, if I'm saying the last name right specifically, but yeah. And he's not going to let the Muppets in, especially since they need to have tickets and so on. And also, turns out that Kermit left his wallet back at the swamp, but maybe he did that on purpose, because, yeah, and trying to find a way to get the Muppets out of Walt Disney World and back to the swamp, because that's what they're really supposed to be doing. But to the Muppets, they didn't like it, and they're really having a good time at Walt Disney World. And yeah, so much happening for the Muppets. Each story's going on with them. Yeah, because, like, Fozzie with his mother, yeah, because Fozzie's mother making an appearance, Ma Bear, you know, them roaming around Disney World, and Fozzie, like, trying to tell jokes to some of the park guests at Disney World, which is pretty funny. And also Dr. Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker, them being there, well, because all throughout this, Beaker has a bucket stuck to his head, and having trouble trying to get it off, even when Honeydew assists Beaker, like, putting on, like, glasses or, like, a hairpiece, which is pretty funny. Or even when, like, they, like, say encounter the Swedish Chef at the World Showcase, which is very fitting for the Swedish Chef. You know, Beaker eating something spicy, which causes the bucket to fly in the air, but then it lands back on him, and now it's still stuck. Also, Gonzo and Camilla, what goes on with them? Because them just roaming around the bowels of Disney. Like, to Gonzo, that's the fun thing to do at Walt Disney World, for his taste and liking. And also, like, trying to impress, you know, his chicken gal, Camilla. So, yeah. Also, Ralph, because, yeah, not much for Ralph in this. You know, we love Ralph, but I don't know, I mean, look, I'm sure for Jim, especially, from Jim and the others, trying their very best on what to do and to fit Ralph in these Muppet materials, you know what I'm saying? Because, yeah, again, not having that much in this, but, you know, in my opinion, I think Ralph's appearance in the Muppets of Walt Disney World was not too bad, because at one point, he comes face to face with this dog catcher, and, you know, can see that Ralph doesn't have a collar, a license and such, and is taken into, like, the dog pound and such that's in Disney World. And the dog catcher, uncreditedly being played by Jeff Brezauer. I don't even know how his last name's pronounced. Again, you know me sometimes, but yeah. Also, some of the others that are uncredited, just to, yeah, go ahead and name some of them, because, yeah. 3 additional Muppet performers: Jim Martin, Joey Mazzarino, if I'm pronouncing that right, and Melissa Whitmire. Oh, okay. And also Blair Barnett. She was an extra, and there was also a frog, one of the frogs, being performed and played by Ricky Boyd, and Various, okay, that's how he's credited. Various being played by Todd Coyle, and another extra, which was Richard Koitkin, if I'm saying that right, yeah. But yeah, mainly the dog catcher and the additional Muppet performers, they're the ones that are uncredited. And Granny Frog was played by B.J. Geyer, yeah. And also some of the other additional Muppet performers, like there was David Rudman, Rick Leone, and Camille Bonora, yeah. And also, the official, the main Muppet performers, we of course, have Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Dave Goelz, Steve Whitmire, Jerry Nelson, Richard Hunt, and Kevin Clash. And yeah, for Kevin Clash, we get to see Clifford in this, and he's hanging out with the Electric Mayhem. Yeah, it seemed like Clifford was a perfect fit to be with the Electric Mayhem, and yeah, like, this was one of the first and early Muppet materials where we got Clifford, because, seeing Clifford throughout the 90s, especially since later on he would become the official host for Muppets Tonight, so yeah. Okay, but anyway, so, like I said, Gonzo and Camilla wandering through the bowels of Walt Disney World like dry cleaners or, pipes and so on. Man, could you imagine if we got more of that, like, really seeing the behind the scenes and the bowels of Walt Disney World, because, man. But, with what we see and with what goes on with Gonzo and Camilla, that was okay. And also, to go ahead and mention them, Stadler and Waldorf, of course, we have to have them there somewhere, and they're basically riding around Main Street, on the horse-drawn trolley, and for the first time, they're not really complaining anything, and just, yeah, they're having a good time in Disney World, and especially Main Street, USA. Also, Miss Piggy and Beauregard. And you know what? With what goes on with Beauregard and how he's a part of this, it's really funny and perfect, because he gets to be Miss Piggy's, assistant, earlier, and when it started, he was helping Miss Piggy with her suitcases and bags, making their way to the swamp. But then when it came to, say, Disney World, Miss Piggy's goal was to go straight directly at the Chinese theater. But as for Beauregard, he wanted to do more at Walt Disney World, and making excuses to Miss Piggy, we go this way and we make our way to, the Chinese theater and such, I know a shortcut and so on. And it's obvious, and we can see that Beauregard, he's acting like a proper tourist, exploring and having a good time at Walt Disney World, going on the rides from, say, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad and Star Tours and Space Mountain, etc. Golly, and poor Miss Piggy, she's not having a great time on those rides. Even when, like, say, on Big Thunder Mountain, she has the big bug eyes, like, poor Piggy. But, for Beauregard, he's having a blast, yeah. And he was so calm when he was on Big Thunder. Just, yeah, that's what's funny. Not Miss Piggy, yeah, she was the total opposite. And Kermit and Robin, because they're trying to apologize to Charles Grodin's character, and when, yeah, they sneak their way and, like, they escape from the security guard, and, trying to find the other Muppets, and the time they spent at, MGM Studios, and, yeah, because, like, also, like, back and forth, they're going from, say, Magic Kingdom, MGM, and Epcot. I mean, just, like, not that difficult to keep up with, but still, And the fact, because, like, while, like, say, Beauregard and Miss Piggy are at Magic Kingdom, Beauregard pointing out at Star Tours, but I'm just saying. And also, yeah, some of the song numbers, like, okay, because to bring up the song numbers, well, the songs are pretty good, because, yeah, like, well, a few, like, one or two songs that Kermit and his fellow frogs sing, like, very briefly singing Being Green, and also Knee Deep, and, and also, one of my favorites, and, when we come up to the Electric Mayhem at the World Showcase, they have their own song number, which being Rockin' All Around the World. Now, that was a pretty good one, where we see the Electric Mayhem, Dr. Teeth, Zoot, Floyd, Janice, Animal, and along with them, Clifford, but also, we only see him for this song number, Lips. Yeah, he's there for just that. Why was he not there with the Muppets all throughout the special? Beats me, but he's just there at that song number, just the one who plays the trumpet, yeah. The song Rock All Around the World is a pretty good song, and the fact, because, seeing the different Muppets, the Electric Mayhem, in different wardrobes and, the different parts of the world showcase is pretty good. And also, more on Stadler and Waldorf, because right after Rockin' All Around the World, Stadler and Waldorf get a very quick song number of their own, where they're still in Main Street on the trolley, and they're interacting with this old lady, and they're singing a song, which being, Who's Your Lady Friend? I mean, it's sweet, and, with Stadler and Waldorf, how they're interacting with the old lady, and just, that was pretty funny. And also, Ralph, when we come back to Ralph, still at the dog pound, like I said, we don't get that much of Ralph in this, but I think how Ralph was done, again, not that bad. I'm dogging it. Yeah, that was an okay song. Not one of my favorites, but still. And yeah, because some of the dogs that are there, because recognize two of them most notably, the one with the glasses and Sprocket from Fraggle Rock. And I think, some of the other dogs in the background, because it looks like, some of them are wearing suits. Clearly, some of those dogs are from Dog City. It's obvious, and if any of you are familiar with Dog City. But anyways, so there's that. And also, more on Charles Grodin's character, Quentin, because him trying to go after the Muppets, and when he comes face-to-face and, has him joining him, and that being Rizzo. Rizzo joining Quentin to find the Muppets, and Quentin has no idea how to say their names correctly, from, say, the Muppets to Kermit's name, and just not knowing the Muppets that much, completely. And even, Rizzo, at one point, correcting him on how to spell and pronounce the Muppets. There's two P's, and so on. Also, at one point, not only did Quentin bring in Rizzo to help him find the Muppets, but also bringing in the seven dwarves, to track down and find the Muppets. That was pretty funny. And also, coming back to, say, Fozzie, because, him struggling trying to entertain some of the park guests at Frontierland. Nobody's buying his jokes. But at a certain point, Kermit does help Fozzie with his situation, bringing in a proper audience, and that being some of the Disney bear characters. Most notably, one of them being Liver Lips and Brer Bear, which is pretty funny. And Wendell was in there too. Even those two bears, the one who rides on a unicycle, if you know which ones I'm talking about, But they're enjoying Fozzie's jokes and reining in the money. And meanwhile, say, as for Miss Piggy, Beauregard, Gonzo, and Camilla, what's going on with them? Because, Gonzo and Camilla's still in the bowels of Disney, and because Gonzo getting a song number, which being Love in a Laundromat, which was pretty funny. And, and as for Piggy and Beauregard, still wanting to ride the rides, while, Beauregard, but for Piggy, just wanting to get to the Chinese theater, and when eventually, them making their way to MGM, and when they're very close to the Chinese theater at the Great Movie Ride. And coming back to Kermit, because, unfortunately, his dream on wanting his Muppet friends to have a good time at the swamp and with his frog family and with the Frog Festival sadly didn't go as planned. But then someone steps in and cheers up Kermit to not give up on his dream, and that being a young girl, as she's credited being played by a young Raven Simone, whom would go on to be in That's So Raven. But at that time, she was also on the, Bill Cosby Show. Even some of the Muppets appeared on the Bill Cosby Show as well. But young Raven Simone stepping in and talking with Kermit, and because, can see that Kermit is down, and Kermit sharing with young Raven on what happened, and, his dream not coming true because, the Muppets interested in Disney World and not, wanting to be at the swamp. And then we come to another song number, which being Rainbow Connection. Raven starts off singing it. And, in the end, and when, Kermit then joins in singing Rainbow Connection, he is not going to give up on his dream and to get his Muppet friends back to the swamp and so on. Yeah. So good on young Raven for helping out Kermit. Yeah. And then after that, because, the Muppets still roaming around Disney World, even at some of the Disney resorts, just mostly the Grand Floridian, because, when some of the Muppets make their way to the Grand Floridian, which, by the way, because I can't forget to mention this, the opening to this, where we have Fozzie and Mama Bear there at the Grand Floridian, and they're with Michael Eisner himself to start off and present the Muppets of Walt Disney World. That was pretty funny. In fact, there are some outtakes of this which are pretty funny, and in the presentation itself, in the end, the Muppets, a group of Muppets coming in and ripping off Eisner's suit, which is pretty funny. Michael Eisner being a good sport at some of that. I mean, because, from, say, Walt Disney to those who would, be, like, the hosts of whatever it is, like, Eisner being one of them, because what's important is to have fun and to, when any shenanigans happen, you know what I mean? Just, And, speaking of which, because, especially around that time, like, say, in the, 80s and 90s, the whole thing on whom was to take Walt Disney's place, being the one who would, say hello and presenting something, from, say, Eisner to Roy Disney and Katzenberg, but especially it was Eisner, and, didn't seem that bad, because, but it's like, they didn't have to really be, say, the next Walt Disney, just do what Walt was doing, just present something and on TV, whatever it is, it's that simple. Anyways, but so some things that happen at Grand Floridian, even when, say, at one point, Robin and Kermit are separated because Robin got on a monorail, and they're split up for a while. Thankfully, they do reunite, of course, when all of the Muppets are back together towards the end of the special. And even when Robin, he passed by the dog pound, and that's where we come into I'm dogging it, But, and also the fact that we have Quentin and the dwarves still on Kermit and the Muppets, their tails, to get them and such and bring them in. And to speed things up some, because, with what else happens in the Muppets of Walt Disney World, and, for Animal, because I didn't talk about Animal that much, because some things that Animal does, like breaking the turntable or messing around with an ice cream machine, or even say when at one point he starts to chase after Snow White, which is pretty funny. Snow White, please! It's pretty funny. And then, when most of, all of the Muppets make their way to MGM Studios. They're all there now. And also, we don't get that much of, do you realize this? Because we don't get that much of Bean Bunny and Scooter. Because there's one scene that we get where, but I'll bring it up when I get there. Because, I'm almost there. Because, most of the Muppets, they've now made their way to MGM Studios. And, Miss Piggy really wanting to get to the Chinese theater, but Beauregard, finding another excuse to do something else before going to the Chinese theater. I know a shortcut. And they're right out front of the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular. And thus, Kermit, Fozzie, and Mama Bear, they're right there in front of the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, and Fozzie spotting Animal, and looks like trouble, come on, and them making their way, and, because Animal, he's still chasing Snow White. The Electric Mayhem spotted Kermit making their way to Indiana Jones, so they go to the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, and then, those announcers, to start off the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular with a microphone, this never happens, but only in this, where apparently the guy with the microphone saying that before we start the show, we need 2 volunteers to be the stunt performers of Indiana and Marion. That's never happened before, but only in this. That's mind-blowing. And wouldn't you know it, 2 of the Muppets are chosen. And who else? Kermit and Piggy. So they're brought in, and now they're the stunt performers of Indiana Jones and Marion. So yeah. And seeing some of the Muppets watching the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular happen with Kermit and Piggy out there, yeah, from Fozzie, Ma Bear, and seeing Scooter and Bean Bunny, because yeah, we see Scooter and Bean Bunny having some ice cream, and yeah, also not to mention that because yeah, Rizzo having a bite of some of the Disney food products, like most notably the Mickey ice cream bar, starting with the ears. I mean, of course, everybody goes for the ears. And then, yeah, because with the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular going on, Kermit is not very keen on violence. In fact, even, like, say, closing his eyes when he pulls the trigger, and asking some of the stunt performers, "Are you okay?" And they're okay, they're smiling, they're having a good time, just, yeah. And Gonzo and Camilla, they make their way to the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular through, like, a drain pipe and such, you know what I'm saying? Because they've been still down there in the bowels of Disney, and they made their way to the stunt spectacular, and seeing the Electric Mayhem there, and they spot Kermit, and, you know, how did our friends get on this show, and so on. And Miss Piggy, well, she seems to be doing pretty well doing this, you know, the stunt spectacular, and really going at it on the plane, you know, because the Nazi jet plane where, yeah, firing the gun, just, she seems okay with this and with the violence. And by the way, if you happen to have noticed this, especially in the Muppets of Walt Disney World, when it comes to the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular, we see the Nazi symbol on the plane. Because, yeah, at a certain point, they changed it. Yeah. I mean, it's understandable. I mean, you know, even though they changed it, we know whom the bad guys are, right? Because the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, they're centering on the stunts of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, yeah, even though that was changed on the plane, we still know. Yeah. Anyways, so, and then, like, Kermit coming face-to-face with the big tough guy, you know, that Indy comes face-to-face with. Kermit is not able to punch him or anything like that in the chest, but Piggy, oh yeah, she's got it from here. Hi-ya! And taking him down instantly. Then Animal stepping in. Animal help! Like, setting the place more to flames, you know, because as it happens in the Stunt Spectacular, and even, like, seeing Snow White applauding and, yeah, like, having a good time and, you know, finding it very delightful with animals. So, yeah. And Kermit and Miss Piggy making a run for it, up to when, yeah, they're finally captured by Quentin. Victory is mine! So now all of the Muppets are brought in. They've been captured by Quentin, and at times Quentin had been on the phone with the mouse himself, yeah, and because, yeah, Mickey has no idea what's been going on this whole time, and because, yeah, Quentin still having trouble trying to say the Muppets and Kermit, their names right, you know, always still having a struggle with that, and Kermit just so happens to know Mickey, because, yeah, when Kermit can see that, yeah, Quentin is right now on the phone with Mickey, and Quentin is reporting to Mickey on whom he's captured, and calling the Muppets evil. Like, geez Louise, yeah. This security guy's intense, you know? And Kermit telling Quentin and the Muppets that he knows Kermit because they're a part of FASA, which stands for Fictional Animal Stars of America. There's no O in FASA, but still, yeah. And that's pretty funny, and it, you know, makes perfect sense. Hey, I have no doubt that one of the others that's a part of FASA, alongside with Kermit and Mickey, is Bugs Bunny. Is it not obvious? But yeah, that's pretty funny and clever. Because, yeah, and FASA being a real thing, of course. But, yeah. So, yeah. And when, yeah, Quentin informing Mickey that, you know, it's the Muppets and it's Kermit, yeah, it's obvious that Mickey wants to have a word with Kermit and setting Quentin straight, yeah, with what he's done. So he passes the phone to Kermit, and Kermit talking with Mickey and such, and Mickey wants to meet with Kermit and the Muppets, at his office. So then we see the Muppets making their way to Mickey's office, and it's also nice and funny because like Mickey's office being like similar to Walt Disney's office. Not to mention there is a big portrait of Walt Disney in there. And yeah, this is where we finally see Mickey Mouse, hand-drawn. Yeah, he's animated. And Mickey being voiced by, at that time, Mickey's main voice actor, the late Wayne Allwyn. Yeah, so Mickey getting to meet Kermit and the other Muppets. Miss Piggy, she makes a grand entrance looking glamorous and so on. Just, yeah, it's pretty funny. Miss Piggy trying to make a move on Mickey. Like, geez, Piggy, just, yeah. He's got many, but anyways. And yeah, Robin mentioning to Mickey how much of a great time they've been having at Disney World, and Mickey saying, well, like we always say, when you wish upon a star, your dreams will come true. And then Kermit stepping in, actually, what we say is, someday you'll find it, the Rainbow Connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me, etc. And then Floyd then saying, uh-oh, they're starting to argue philosophy. Oh, Floyd, that's great. And that's another thing, because some of the jokes that the Muppets say throughout this, well, they're funny, of course, yeah, especially the good old days of the Muppets, yeah. And Mickey then tells Kermit and the gang that he wants them to make their way to the Chinese theater to place their handprints and footprints in the cement, and yeah, welcoming them to the family. And yeah, welcome to the family. And he's got his arms around Kermit. And say what you will, I don't know, because look, some characters that are hand-drawn and the way that their facial expressions are drawn, I guess that's just the way it is. I don't know. I mean, I can go into so much detail, but I'm sure you get what I'm saying. Just, bear with me on this. But, yeah, but just like the look that Mickey gives, I don't know, I don't make that much of it, it's just his face, I mean, just, anyways. But, and that's great to see, because, once again, because the achievement of hand-drawn animated characters on screen, live action, and the fact because, you have Mickey interacting with the Muppets, and yeah, when Kermit's right there next to him, that's great. And then we get one more song number, and where all of the Muppets making their way to the Chinese theater, placing their foot and handprints in the cement, and yeah, because more, and I think, yeah, that's it, because I think, yeah, that's the song number. But yeah, anyways, but yeah, that was a pretty good song number. And even like, say, some other characters that pop up, like we see Animal with Snow White once more. Not to mention, Link Hogthrob did pop up here and there in the Muppets of Walt Disney World, yeah. And also, poor Quentin, now he's working on cleaning the gum and such on the park benches. Yeah, no longer being a security guard. Well, I guess he kind of had what was coming to him, just, and how he poorly treated the Muppets, you know what I'm saying? Just, yeah. But hey, at least he still, at least he didn't get fired, being at Disney World. But yeah. But overall, because, yeah, them placing their handprints and footprints, and yeah, them slowly but surely making their way and being a part of the Disney family. And after that, well, they all make their way back to the swamp, and yeah, now the Muppets seem to do okay, and they seem to have a good time now being in the swamp, and it's not as bad as how they felt at first, yeah. Even like, say, Gonzo going for a fly and such, yeah. And by the way, because there were some flies flying around, and I did notice, yeah, some of them were on Beaker, but yeah. And Beaker, yeah, because didn't talk that much about Honeydew and Beaker, because, yeah, most of the majority of them being in this is, poor Beaker having a bucket stuck to his head, but yeah. So the gang's all there, and we don't see them, and we don't see this, where, it was said that they would watch the fireworks from the swamp, and we don't see that, but, just one of those things. However, they noticed that someone's missing, and that being Miss Piggy. She's still back at the Chinese theater, and she's stuck in the cement. Her feet, shoes, just Now they have to rush back. They get pickaxe and shovels. And yeah, the last thing we see is Piggy still at the Chinese theater calling for help. And yeah, then the credits roll. And yeah, that's how the Muppets at Walt Disney World ends. Which, yeah, that being a very fitting and hilarious way to end this off. And yeah, because this is the Muppets we're talking about. But yeah, overall, the Muppets at Walt Disney World. It's a funny, entertaining piece of Muppets material on TV, and this being one of the very first Muppet materials where they would be at Disney and when they would cross paths with Disney and slowly but surely making their way into the Disney family. And even though it didn't happen like what was originally intended, it would happen, as I said, like the next decade, where yeah, the Muppets would become a part of the Disney family officially. But yeah, just yeah, everything about the Muppets at Walt Disney World from beginning to end, just yeah, really good. From the story and what goes on with the Muppets, the songs, them going from, say, Magic Kingdom, Epcot, MGM Studios, them going on the Disney rides, the people they interact with, and yeah, with Charles Grodin, young Raven-Symoné making appearances in this, and, you know, the Seven Dwarves, Snow White being there, and just, yeah, and each of the stories for these Muppets, what they're doing in Disney World, because, yeah, most notably, you know, Gonzo and Camilla in the bowels of Disney, the Electric Mayhem at the World Showcase, poor Beaker with a bucket on his head, Piggy trying to make her way to the Chinese theater, but Beauregard wanting to explore and, you know, do, you know, as a tourist should do, you know, have a good time at Walt Disney World and riding the attractions, yeah. And, you know, Fozzie Bear trying to be hilarious, tell some jokes, the Muppets being chased by Charles Grodin and the Dwarves, and when it all leads up to the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, meeting Mickey, them being a part of the Disney family, placing their hand and footprints in the cement outside of the Chinese theater, just, yeah. And the fact, because, you know, this all began when, you know, Kermit, he wanted to bring his Muppet friends to the Orlando swamp, you know, a frog family reunion, such, just, yeah. It's just overall, the Muppets at Walt Disney World, it's really good. Yeah. And again, I would say it's an important piece of, you know, of the Muppets history, don't you think? Just, yeah. And I'm giving the Muppets at Walt Disney World, yeah, just, what the heck, yeah. 10 out of 10 stars. Yes. 10 out of 10 stars for the Muppets at Walt Disney World. And what about you guys? What did you think of the Muppets at Walt Disney World itself? What are your fondest memories when you first discovered this? I'm sure, yeah, a good majority of you seen this on social media, most notably YouTube. What are some of your favorite moments to come from the Muppets at Walt Disney World? And knowing the history of when Jim Henson was going to have Disney acquire some of the Muppets, including his company, you know, when this, like, what was originally planned before he would sadly pass away. And, you know, having gone to the Disney parks and experiencing Muppet Vision 3D and knowing the history, the more history on what would have been at MGM/Hollywood Studios. We would have gotten a Muppet Land, but the only thing that we got was just Muppet Vision. But yeah, I mean, technically that location, you know, still being Muppets, you know, Grand Avenue, you know, Grand Park, you know, Courtyard, just, yeah, that, all that stuff. And what are some of your favorite songs and funny moments to come from the Muppets at Walt Disney World? Yeah, just overall, what do you think of the Muppets at Walt Disney World itself, and with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of The Muppets at Walt Disney World. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. And, well, one more piece of Muppet TV material for me to review, part of Muppet Weekend. So stay tuned, because what I will be reviewing next, well, let's just say, and as was mentioned, where, yeah, around 2004 and 5, the Muppets would officially become a part of the Disney family. Well, Disney and the Muppets would do something else on TV, and this being a TV special / movie, you know, where, you know, it could have been really good and entertaining, but sadly, yeah. Let's just say that, yeah, we have the Muppets in the Land of Oz. Yeah, you know what it is. Again, stay tuned for that. Take care, and peace out. Waka waka waka!